Yes, so who'll talk first? Ladies, okay.
Yeah, good.
Your name, please?
I'm Elfie from Germany.
Name is?
Elfie. E-L-F-I. Yes.
E-F-I?
E-L-F-I.
Elfie.
Elfie, yeah.
Yeah, from Germany.
Yeah, right.
Do you have a business or occupation in Germany?
Well, sort of, yes. Right.
So what do you do in Germany?
Well, I'm doing this handicrafts business.
Handicraft. I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Well, it happened to me some traumatic experience. My son committed suicide 6 months ago.
Yes.
And he was only 25, and which left me in deep anguish and
I can understand that. Yes.
and with feelings
but
of
any particular reason he did that?
well, he was depressed. He got this bipolar depression, they call it in medical terms.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And he was convinced that he was not ever going to
recover,
to reach happiness in this life, and to reach a sense of well-being. And
yes, I see.
so he decided to end his life.
Yes,
and
yes.
So that left me in deep shock and anguish. And so I'm searching for ways to get out of this traumatic experience and to get a reconciliation with
so after
life.
that experience, what did you do? Did you go and see some people or start reading some books?
No, not particularly. I talked a lot with friends and tried to find out the reasons and sort of get some answers why this had happened.
Yes.
But still, the answers are not completely satisfying. And so why this had particularly happened to me and what was my responsibility in this. And so I'm just wanting to know how to find some healing for this kind of affliction and to get one's faith in life restored again.
Yes. What brought you here? Somebody recommended that you come
yes,
talk to
one
me?
friend
Did
from...
you read some books?
No,
what
not
exactly happened?
No, one friend recommended that I come here. And
I see. He had been here?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
I see.
Yes.
I see.
Well, sure, I have written some read some spiritual books also from different sources.
Yeah. Now, most important concept as far as I'm concerned about this, basically about life and death. Everything is already predetermined. As soon as a conception takes place, the destiny starts. This is my concept. And therefore, whether the conception will ultimately end in a baby being born, or the conception will be miscarried or aborted, is something already predestined. Nobody can know anything about it. Why? The only answer is because it simply had to happen according to God's will or cosmic law. You can either think of God's will or cosmic law. Cosmic law is something which concerns the entire universe for all time. Something so vast and so complex, the human brain can never understand. And it is for this reason that the basis of every religion is that we cannot know the reason why something happens. Everything happens according to God's will or cosmic law. That's why in the Christian religion, thy will be done. Ultimately, that is the only answer. So, if it's not easy to accept God as someone like us, but more powerful, doing this to me. Therefore, I say everything happens, either you can say according to God's will, or, which is more acceptable, according to the cosmic law. That is impersonal, more easy to accept. Therefore, everything happens according to the cosmic law, the basis of which we cannot know. And therefore, whatever happens, we have to accept. For instance, a murder happens. One more. Your name, sir?
I'm Martin.
Martin. Mm-hmm. What part of the world are you from?
I'm as well from Germany.
Germany, I see. What do you do in Germany?
I'm in oncological research.
What research?
Oncological, cancer.
I
Cancer research.
You're a doctor then?
I'm not a doctor, but I'm still in.
And you have been interested in what I talk about for many years?
I came across your books in summer last year, and I got enormous insight, and there are still some aspects that are puzzling.
I see. I
decided to come to Mumbai.
You read my books in English or German?
In English and in German.
And in German, I see. Okay, I just wanted to, so that when I talk, I'll keep you in mind that you will also. Mm-hmm. So, the usual example I give about what happens according to the cosmic law, and which the human being mind cannot know. And yet it has happened all over the world, in every country. A murder happens. After that, what happens? What do you think can happen? What do you think can happen? I'm sorry, your name you said is?
Elfie.
Elfie?
Yes.
And yours is?
Martin.
Martin, Elfie and Martin. What do you suppose can happen? A murder happens. Would you believe, after the murder has happened, 4 different things can happen? Murder means someone has killed another person. But 4 different things can happen concerning the murder. The usual thing is, the murderer is caught, the murderer confesses, the murderer is sentenced to death, and the murderer is executed. Our simple mind says that is how life should always be. But life has never ever been so simple as that. Life has never been so simple as that. 3 other things have happened, are recorded. One, the murder is never solved. The file remains with the police. The murder is never solved, and the murder goes scot-free. Or sometimes the murder is solved, the murderer is caught, the murderer goes before the court, and the judge and the jury decide. We know he is the murderer, but not enough legal
evidence.
Valid evidence.
Evidence.
Therefore, we are forced to let him go. And do you know there is a 4th possibility?
He might be innocent, and
that is the point. Therefore, these are 3 connected with the murder. But someone totally innocent, never knowing who, he could be convicted of murder because of coincident evidence which is acceptable to him. And even an innocent man is sometimes punished for a murder he did not commit, which the human being cannot accept. How can God be so unjust? See what I mean? Therefore, unless one is able to accept this basic fact, our brain cannot, or no explanation can satisfy the human judgment. Whatever happens can only be according to God's will or cosmic law, the basis of which we can never ever understand. Unless I am able to accept that, if I am able to accept that, considerable suffering is avoided. If I am not able to accept this, then what happens? Questions arise. Why did God create Hitler? Because of whom 9 million Jewish people lost their lives. The answer is 9 million Jewish people were supposed to lose their lives according to the cosmic law. And everybody has to lose his life sometime. So such questions don't bother me. Or why should God create Osama bin Laden? Why should God create Hitler? And the only answer is because the basis of the manifestation and this functioning that we call life is duality, beginning with male and female. In other words, my concept is that the one source, the one unmanifest singularity or unicity, oneness as the source, when the source manifested itself, it had to be duality, beginning with male and female, and duality of every conceivable kind, which turn into the multiplicity. Therefore, male and female, beautiful and ugly, good and evil, wealth and poverty, health and disease, is a necessary part of it. Therefore, the answer is, why did God create Hitler? Because God also created Jesus Christ and Saint Francis and the prophet, Zoroaster, and many saints. Therefore, there is a sane person. Therefore, the psychopath also had to be created. More important, why does God create handicapped children? What harm have they done? Answer is because God creates healthy children. So, if I accept this basic question, then everything is predetermined. That is my concept. Everything is predetermined. But the topmost physicists and mathematicians, they have also accepted that everything is predetermined, not as a concept, but as the conclusion they have arrived at on their own working. Therefore, we can take it that everything is predetermined from the point of even conception. That's my point. Yes.
But there's also the law of cause and effect. So it means to every effect there's a cause also.
So that is the point. For this effect to happen, what was the cause? We cannot know. That is according to the cosmic law, which is so vast and complex, we simply cannot know. Quite right. For this effect, there has to be a cause. But we cannot know the cause. Or not really the cause, but the series of causation. We think there is one cause. But for a particular thing to happen, there may be tens of thousands of strings behind it. You see what I mean? Not one cause and effect. So my concept there is, as soon as there was a big bang and the manifestation happened, the entire causation started. Entire cause and effect series started. But what specific cause leads to what, we can never know. But cause and effect, yes. But the point is, we cannot know what caused it and another. Supposing else, you did know the cause, why your son died. That can't really help you. It's more important to know that it had to happen at that time. It had to happen at that time. My son died in India when my wife and I were in Seattle in the course of a series of talks. He was ill, but he had been ill for quite some time. So I got the message in the middle of the night. Therefore, who is going to live, how long, who is going to, nobody can know. Everything is predetermined. But the most satisfying point about death, from my point of view, the most satisfying point about death is that nobody dies. What dies is the body, mind, organism. A three-dimensional object dies. What dies is a three-dimensional object. Everything is the manifestation, of which each human body is one three-dimensional object, is created, and every three-dimensional object gets destroyed sometime or the other. But therefore, who is the one who is concerned about the death of someone? You see what I mean? Therefore, the basic fact that I'm concerned with, basically, there are only two items, LP and this body-mind object, Ramesh and this object. And
Martin.
I'm sorry?
Martin.
Martin. And Martin and this body. See what I mean? Forget everything. As far as in any of us, only two items. Martin and this body, which he says is my body. LP and her body. Ramesh and his body. Every human being and his body. What exists? Just these two. So one is called the ego, the other is called an object. The object obviously is part of the manifestation. Object, but who is Martin or Ramesh or LP? She's not an object. Therefore, LP, Martin, Ramesh and every ego is not part of the manifestation. Every ego, every human being, every me, you, he and she cannot be a part of the manifestation. And therefore, every ego, every me, you, he and she has to be connected with the source. Whatever we think of, however we think of the source, God, energy, consciousness, whichever we think of it, each of us as the ego, as an individual entity, is necessarily connected to the source of God. Therefore, God is every human being. And therefore I am told every human being is God. I am that. That is the basis of this Advaita. I am that. You are that. He is that. She is that. That creates a lot of confusion. The ordinary person says, if I am God, why should I suffer? Why don't I have more power? Therefore I say the other way around. I take it, you are not God. God is you and me and he and she as identified consciousness. So for each ego, my basic concept is every ego is the impersonal consciousness as the source identified with each body-mind organism as identified consciousness. Every ego is a consciousness, but identified consciousness. Necessary only so long as the ego is supposed to work with identification with a body-mind organism. Normally, we are concerned with our suffering. Who suffers? The source doesn't suffer. Impersonal consciousness doesn't suffer. But that identified consciousness, me, he or she, suffers because according to my concept, the connection between the ego and the source, the connection between the ego as identified consciousness and the source as impersonal consciousness gets broken. Every time the connection gets broken, the human being is unhappy. When does the connection get broken? According to my concept, every time I forget the fact that I am only a three-dimensional object. Therefore, anything that happens through this three-dimensional object must be precisely what is supposed to happen according to the will of the source. Or the source is functioning through this three-dimensional object and bringing about whatever is supposed to happen according to a cosmic law. But when I think I have done something and I feel proud or guilty, the connection gets broken. Every time the ego forgets the fact that he cannot be the doer, he is only an instrument through which the source functions and brings about whatever the happening is, however it hurts or helps someone, is still the cosmic law, the impersonal consciousness, the source working through me. Yeah.
Now, if you have not an unbroken relationship, but you experience physical pain, you yourself, how do you handle the physical pain, knowing you're not connected with the source, but still feeling a pain?
Yeah. So, therefore, this is the theory. What is the practice? What is practical daily living?
There is a part of
what
suffering.
What is that practical daily living, Martin? Practical daily living is extraordinarily simple. I'm not saying acceptable. It's extraordinarily simple. What is the mechanism of daily living? As far as the caveman is concerned 3,000 years ago, or you and me, or the psychopath now, or anyone in the future. What is the mechanism of what we call daily living? Then we can talk. And the mechanism of daily living means every human being, 3,000 years ago for the caveman or you and me now, means every one of us has the total free will to do whatever one likes to do, in other words, daily living begins when in a given situation I decide what I want in that situation and what I shall do in order to get what I want, and I do it. Daily living has begun. Therefore, daily living begins with every human being doing whatever he thinks it should be done. Before I had this understanding, what was my attitude to the work, to daily living? I have done this. I have done this. I am responsible for it. And which brought in the suffering of the result. I have done this. I have been able to help someone. So what happened? I am proud of helping someone.
But Ramesh, sometimes there is the knowledge that I'm not responsible, but I'm still suffering.
Now, wait, yes. So what I'm saying is, therefore, the suffering that you're talking about is the pain in the moment. The suffering we usually talk about means the pain in the moment. The pain in the moment may be physical or psychological. Pain if it is a disease, psychological if her son is dead. The fact that her son is dead means psychological pain in the moment. And my point is, nobody, basic fact of daily living is, no one knows what the next moment will bring, pleasure or pain. Either because of what I did, or because of what someone else did, or because of nobody does anything. It's a natural event which happens. So nobody knows whether the next moment will bring pleasure or pain. From the beginning of time, no one has known whether the next moment will bring pleasure or pain. And two, nobody can know the total amount of pleasure and pain every human being is supposed to experience in one's life. And that is predetermined. So the fact of life is that I am forced to live my life in circumstances which are, A, I can never know whether the next moment will bring pleasure or pain. I can never know the total amount of pleasure and pain I'm going to experience in my life. These are the two basic facts of life over which nobody has any control, and still we have to live our life.
But where's the free will in that? There's no free will then, if everything is predetermined.
Elfie, there's a book there, small book. Does the human being have free will? And in small, right on the cover, in small bracket, I have said, the answer will surprise you. So that I want you to buy the book and read it. The answer will surprise you. What you just said, this is a fact. You see, now, talking about this free will for a moment. Free will. My main point is, Elfie, God was forced to give every human being the dubious gift of free will. Otherwise, daily living would not have happened. for daily living to happen, every human being has to have total free will in any given situation to do whatever he or she feels like doing. Moral, immoral, selfish, unselfish, legal, illegal. Thereafter what happens? The mechanism of daily living thereafter means I have no control over the result of my action. Every human being has had total free will. Without that, daily living cannot happen. Fact number one. Fact number two, nobody ever had any control over the result of his action. What is one's, everybody is experiencing. Everybody. Sometimes I've got what I wanted. Sometimes I've not got what I wanted. And sometimes what I got was beyond expectation. Many times for the worse, sometimes for the better. Which of the three things happens? No human being has ever had any control. And thereafter what happens? The society in which I live cannot know what I have done, can only accept what has happened as my action. One of three things over which I had no control. You see the irony of it, the joke of it? I am free to do whatever I want. One of three things happens, and the society in which I live considers what has happened as my action, over which I had no control. Judges it as good or bad according to the existing social regulation and legal provisions, as good or bad, rewards me or punishes me. Reward from the society means pleasure, punishment from the society means pain. And that is daily living. In other words, what does it mean? It clearly means, fact number one, I do have total free will. Fact number two, it is in practical daily living, it's worthless. But they are two separate facts. I do have total free will, but in practical terms, it is worthless. Then
I think I do fully understand and agree to the free will concept. That there is basically no free will. I intuitively fully understand that. But what puzzles me...
What do you really, totally understand?
Well, that it is an illusion if I think I am doing something. It happens, it's coming to my mind and I am reacting. And this is even quite nicely, there had been an experience with functional MRI where you can scan your head.
Quite right.
And there was an experiment that you should push a red button or a green button. Now, it is free will to push the red button and the green button. And they found that the motoric areas in the brain...
Half a second before the action happens.
Yeah.
The decision
0.3 seconds before the action happens.
Yeah. Before you thought you had done it.
Yeah.
I know that. I know that. Therefore, what I'm saying is, I do have free will, because unless I exercise my free will, daily living cannot happen. But the free will is worthless in practical living. And the free will is worthless also as a mechanism, because it has been proved in the laboratory that what I consider my decision was taken in the brain half a second before I decided I would do it. Therefore, even technically it is not my action. And I went a little deeper. I said, what is the basis of what I consider my decision? And I came to the conclusion, the surprising conclusion, that the basis of my free will is only two factors, no third factor, my genes and my up-to-date conditioning.
And you're up to?
Conditioning.
Condition.
I had no control over being born to particular parents, therefore I had no control over the genes in this human object. And since you have been doing, you must have done the reading about the modern research also, about the power of the genes.
But what puzzles me, again, I fully understand and I would accept there is no free will, basically. But what puzzles me is the second conclusion you're taking, and it is consequent, and it is that everything is predetermined.
Yes.
And this is very hard for me to get, because if I think, yes, everything is predetermined, what effect would that have? That would mean well, there is no drive for me to do anything anymore. It is ridiculous what we are doing in society, in imprisonment and in doing research, etc.
And that would be conditioning. That would be conditioning.
But my question is, what makes you think that truly everything is determined? Can it not be, well, put it differently, I'm very convinced that in the maximum point of instability, that there is a very easy access of spiritual or energetic influences to counteract with material world. Chuang-Tzu wrote that no, that's a different story. Sorry. For instance, with a butterfly and the wing of the butterfly generating a storm. So with small effects, you can generate big momentum. But, and I do understand this, but does it really truly mean that all and everything is predetermined? Does it mean that every birth had been predetermined? Which of the million male seeds fertilized the egg?
Yes.
And this is something I find hard to, it still puzzles me, and I don't get over the point of that puzzling.
Yeah, that's why I said it's my concept. But for the physicists and the mathematicians, they have worked it out and they have come to the conclusion everything is predetermined. You know, Hawkins.
I read Hawkins.
You have read his essay? Is everything predetermined?
Yeah, one time, yeah.
Have you read his essay?
I've read it, yeah.
And what does he say? In conclusion, he says, is everything predetermined? Question mark. It is, comma, yes, full stop. But so my point is, either I can accept my concept or I can accept the calculation of a very, very capable physicist and mathematician and yet say, I don't believe it. That is your privilege. Martin, that is your privilege. But if it is really predetermined, your privilege of not accepting it is not going to change. If everything is predetermined, it is predetermined. Whether 500,000 people believe it and the rest don't believe it.
Yeah, it puzzled me very extensively.
Oh, I can imagine.
The only solution I found so far is to just forget the question.
Me too.
The only conclusion I came to was just forget the question.
That's the point.
It's no point. But there would be immense practical relevance if I really truly could accept it.
But so from practical point of view, I say my concept. But when the top physicists and mathematicians come to this concept, I must give some weight to it. I must give some weight to the scientific knowledge that exists.
Yeah. But still, it is not proven. I mean, it's a speculation with Hawkins, and he made that point very nicely.
Yes, you can say that the new scientific knowledge will say that it is not predetermined. And therefore, there is the theory of uncertainty. The theory of uncertainty. But for me, the theory of uncertainty proves that everything is predetermined. Because what is, we cannot know. We see a particle in a particular situation, but we cannot know after where it will be. We cannot know, but where it will be is already predetermined. Anyway, that's not so important. My point now here is, I decided that I do have total free will, but it's worthless in practice because I don't know this. Then I decided to find out what is the basis of my free will. And I came to only two, genes and conditioning. And more conditioning, more and more research brings out how powerful this genes is. Everybody has known that many of the diseases can be traced to some gene. But the recent one brings out fantastic. The three items I recently read in morning newspaper, not in special. And that is,
sorry,
whether I am I'm a generous person or I am a miser, is according to my genes. More important, whether I am going to be faithful to my wife or not, also depends on my genes. Fact, recently. And the third one I read only last week was that whether a child is going to be a bully when he goes to school and through life, or the victim of a bully, again according to the genes. The genes is such a powerful factor. But there is yet another factor, which I call conditioning. Just as I had no control over being born to particular parents, and therefore no control over my genes, which is such a powerful factor, there is another, I had no control over being born to particular parents in a particular geographical environment. You in Germany, me in India. And more important, a particular social structure. Upper class, upper middle class, lower middle class or low class. In which geographical and social environment, this body-mind organism received a bombardment of conditions. A bombardment of conditions. From day one, conditioning at home, the way my parents and other members of the family behave, in the social life, the way the social members of that society behaved in life, the way the conditioning I received in a school and college in that relevant society, conditioning in church or temple, a bombardment of conditioning. From day one, this is good, that is bad, you must do this, you must not do that. This is socially acceptable, that is socially not acceptable. This is a sin and God will punish you. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Therefore, whatever I think is my free will, according to which I decide my next action, on analysis it is found that it is based on two factors, my genes and my condition. Genes is more or less fixed, but conditioning keeps on changing all the time. Anything I read or hear or experience has the power to change my existing conditioning or even transform it. In fact, what is happening now is fresh conditioning. I have no truth to give you. I can only give you my concepts and tell you what my concepts have done for me. Then it's up to you to judge whether you'll accept my concept or not. So that at any time, fresh conditioning is happening, which can amend or alter your existing conditioning, or even transform it. Therefore, at any time, whatever I have done is based on these two factors, over which I had no control. Then I asked myself, who did have control over these two factors? Only answer is, God did. God infused, God was the source, infused these two factors in this body-mind instrument, so that the source can function through this instrument and know exactly what will be brought about. So that meant, quite clearly, without the slightest doubt, whatever I thought was my action was precisely what God expected me to do. Whatever I did was based on two factors, which God infused in this body-mind instrument. Therefore, whatever I thought was my action was precisely what God expected me to do. More accurately, whatever I thought I had done was precisely what God had brought about, functioning through this body-mind instrument. Therefore, the mind-boggling conclusion I came to is, whether the society decides my action as good or bad, which results in pleasure or pain which I have to accept, but as far as I am concerned, it is not my action. I cannot commit a sin. The mind-boggling conclusion I came to was, I cannot commit a sin. I don't have to fear God. If I don't have to fear God, nothing stops me from loving God. And not having to fear God, I don't have to lose night's sleep, worrying about God collecting on a huge computer all the sins I commit. I cannot commit a sin, and more important, the murderer cannot commit a sin. The psychopath cannot commit a sin. The saint cannot collect a lot of merit. Not he is doing. See what I mean? That tremendous lot of suffering was removed. I am not the doer. God is the doer through this body. So the entire load of sin and guilt was thus removed. But the fact remains that I still have to live my life in the society which will continue to judge my action as my action, and they will not accept my word. It's not my action, it's a happening. And if I continue to say not my action, they threaten to put me in an insane asylum. Therefore, I don't have to fear God, but before I do my next action, I must think, if I do this, what will society give me, pleasure or pain? Even having considered that I have no control over the result, therefore daily living therefore means I do have total free will, but I have no control over the result. Therefore, the conclusion is I do have total free will, but both in theory and practice it is worthless. But that doesn't mean I have no free will. I know that my free will is worthless both in theory and in practice. Then your question will be, if I know that it is not my free will which I am using but something borrowed from God. How do I do my next action? Very simple. I do my next action as part of the mechanism of daily living as if I have free will, knowing I don't have free will. But the result is, knowing that I really have no free will, in effect, the advantage is, in any situation, I do whatever I feel like doing, and thereafter knowing that no human being ever had any control over the result, I sit back, relax, witness whatever is happening as a happening which had to happen according to God's will cosmically, without condemning anybody for anything, without any regrets about the past, without any complaints in the present. Why? Because I've already used my free will to do whatever I want. Having done it, how can I have any complaint? And no expectations in the future, which has resulted in what my basic concept has resulted in what every human being is fundamentally seeking in this life. So, my focal point is, what does someone like us, fortunately reasonably comfortable in life, for which we have to be eternally grateful to God, that while I am reasonably comfortable, millions of people are suffering below the poverty line. So my focal question is, what does someone like us, reasonably comfortable in life, and having the common sense to know that while I have the total free will to do whatever I want, I can never know what the next moment will bring. I cannot also know the total amount of pleasure and pain I have to experience in life. What does someone like us want most in life? As happiness. That is my focal question. Now, I brought this all in because we are talking of free will. But the question of death, we have left that in between. The ego, what is the ego? The ego is identified consciousness. Therefore, what it means is, when the ego does something, it is the soul functioning through this body-mind organism, through that connection with this body and bringing about whatever is happening. Therefore, the ego is a connection with the source only so that the source will function through this body-mind organism and bring about whatever is supposed to happen. So what happens to the ego when the body is dead? That is what you should be concerned with. Whether my son or your son, when my son or your son is dead, what has happened? What has happened is that according to what is predetermined, that particular ego is no longer wanted in this functioning of the manifestation. That ego is no longer needed. Therefore, when the body is dead, the ego, the identified consciousness, identification is no longer necessary, and the identified consciousness again becomes impersonal consciousness. Nobody dies. Neither my son nor your son, neither me nor you. What happens is, the connection which was necessary for things to happen through that instrument is no longer necessary. And the identified consciousness again becomes impersonal consciousness. It's only the body, three-dimensional object, who is dead and is buried or cremated. No one can die because no one really existed except as an imaginary connection between the source and the object. So only that connection is no longer necessary. So fundamentally the ego is the body-mind organism with which the source has connected itself as a separate entity with a sense of personal doership, so that daily living can happen. And that ego suffers as soon as he believes that any action of his is his action. Moment I believe something I have done or something you have done, my connection with the source gets broken. Therefore, every suffering is mechanically, my connection gets broken. And that is the human unhappiness. And that is the unhappiness which I don't want. So that really what I am wanting is not the happening of what causes me pain, suffering. My focal point, what do I want most? What I want most is not the happening of that suffering. Pleasure and pain, nobody has any control. So now, previously, because I continued to feel that I did what I did and you did what you did, every human being collects a load of guilt and shame for his own action which have hurt someone close to him, or a bigger load of hatred for others have hurt me. And that is the suffering which we want ended. That is all the happiness we can want. The happiness that every human being wants is in actual fact wanting this load of guilt and shame for my action and the heavier load of hatred for others to disappear. And the only way it can disappear, that is my concept which I have to give you. The only way it can disappear is if I am enlightened. That is the religious part, the spiritual part. The only way I can be happy is to be enlightened. So therefore, what is enlightenment? For 40 years I pursued enlightenment. I honestly didn't know why. But something made me seek enlightenment. I didn't choose to go to a guru and ask enlightenment. Something made this body mine. That was its destiny. But I still had to question. What is the enlightenment I am supposed to pursue? More important, what will enlightenment do for me for the rest of my life that I didn't have before? Isn't that the most valid, practical question? See what I mean? Yeah. I asked my guru, and do you know what happened? He got very angry. Okay, how dare you ask? You are doubting that I am enlightened? But when he saw that the others also wanted to know the answer, and then he cooled down. And then he gave, answer he gave me. He said, I know what enlightenment brings me because after I am enlightened. You will know after you are enlightened. What kind of an answer is that? But therefore my point is, I can tell you that I am enlightened. Therefore what I am telling you is, I pursued enlightenment for 40 years and ended up thoroughly frustrated. I started on my own personal seeking. Seeking what? Seeking and pursuing the selfish object of personal happiness. I pursued my personal happiness and I ended up by being enlightened. Isn't that a joke? I repeat, I pursued enlightenment 40 years, ended in frustration. Then I started pursuing happiness for myself in the given conditions of life. And I came to the conclusion that the only way, mind you, I'm still pursuing happiness, self, and I came to the conclusion, which I now call my concept of enlightenment. Enlightenment is not something somebody can certify. Enlightenment is everybody's concept. So now my concept of enlightenment, which has given me this happiness, is, you see, I came to the conclusion. I am not happy because I carry a load of guilt and shame for my action and a bigger load of hatred for others who have hurt me. And enlightenment means a removal of that load. Enlightenment means removal of that load of hatred for myself, for my action, and a bigger load of hatred for others for their action. That's the conclusion I came to. And therefore, my concept of enlightenment has meant to me very clearly. Enlightenment means the total acceptance that everything in the world is happening according to God's will, cosmic law. How each happening affects whom, for better or worse, according to the basic duality, is again according to God's will, cosmic law, through which body-mind instrument the happening happens, which the society calls my action, your action, or her action, is again according to God's will, cosmic law. The human being is incapable of doing any action. So I said to myself, that is the only way I can have my ultimate happiness, which I call enlightenment. What do you think was my reaction of being enlightened? My reaction was, how dare I give my concept of enlightenment to anyone? That everything is happening according to God's will, cosmic law. The human being is incapable of doing anything. That is the concept, total acceptance is enlightenment. Would I dare give this concept to anyone?
It's the wrong question. There is nobody to dare.
No. What I'm saying is, such a stupid. How can anyone not be the doer of his action? But that is the conclusion I came to. So I said, I will not utter a whisper of it to anyone. But I pursued this. And having pursued this, I found, if I am able to accept I am not the doer, the entire load of hatred for myself disappears. The other cannot be. The other load disappears. And when this load of hatred disappeared, I found that the happiness I was seeking was peace of mind. Therefore, the answer was, what is enlightenment? According to my concept, total acceptance. Everything in the world is happening according to God's will, cosmic law, through which body, mind always happens, and how it affects whom is again according to God's will, cosmic law. No human being is capable of doing anything. Total acceptance of that is enlightenment. And what will enlightenment do for you? What the enlightenment will do for you is to remove this load of hatred, which will mean happiness through non-dualism, happiness through peace of mind. The ultimate, therefore my point is, the ultimate happiness, personal, selfish happiness every human being is seeking is ultimately happiness through peace of mind. But more importantly, the happiness everybody is seeking is the removal of this load of hatred for myself and hatred for the other. Then two lovely things happen. One, I came to know that the concept which I have worked out and came to myself after a lot of misery were exactly the concepts of the great Buddha. Later on I came to know the Buddha's concept about enlightenment. In his own words, events happen, deeds are done, consequences happen, but there is no individual doer of any deed. Total acceptance of that means enlightenment. And what will enlightenment do for me? Buddha is very accurate. He says enlightenment means the end of suffering. Stops there. But I had already known what the suffering which ends. The load of guilt and shame for my action, load of hatred for the other. That is the suffering which ends, for which I have given a positive name of happiness through peace of mind. And the other satisfying thing was, I came to know that the ancient 3,000, 4,000 years old title for this happiness we are seeking in Sanskrit is exactly the same. Happiness through peace of mind. And the Sanskrit word, 5,000, God knows how many years old, Sukha Shanti. So, when I mentioned that, then everybody, yes, of course. But people are seeking Sukha Shanti. Yes, we already knew that. Why the hell didn't you say so? So ultimately, what everyone is seeking is the simple, not being bliss, not being special powers, but simply Sukha Shanti is happiness through peace of mind. That is all we are going to get. There's a joke about this. Someone went to a Zen master. And said, I'm very keen, I've been 20 years, I'm a Zen master. Will you take me as a disciple? Then the Zen master started talking to him. Before he could say 2 sentences, the spiritual seeker talked 50 sentences. So he said, this won't do, your mind is too full of concepts. So he said, you must go and stay in my monastery for 2 years. He thought he would give up. Yes. 2 years? He said, yes. I'm determined. I'm determined to be enlightened. Yes, I'll for 2 years. After 2 years he came back. He wanted to have it. I said, all right, tell me what you have to say. Only 2 words. So he thought and he said, food bad. Food bad at the monastery. 2 words. Food bad. Sent him back again. You still want to, but yes. So 2 years later he comes back again. 2 words. Bed hard.
Another 2 years.
Sent back again. 3rd time he comes. 2 words. I quit. I don't want your enlightenment. So my point is, the average Indian spiritual seeker never considers these 2 questions. What is and what will enlighten? So I asked myself, why should this be the position? Why should this be the position? And then I came to the conclusion that the reason is that the Indian spiritual seeker sees no point in this question because he expects to be God. When I'm enlightened, I'll be God. When I'm God, I shall be wanting nothing. When I'm enlightened, no more pain. I'll know everything that goes on anywhere. I shall have special power. I shall make no mistake. Therefore, it is nothing of that sort. So when they come, I said, you think I'm enlightened? They say yes. I tell them, yes, I agree. I am enlightened. But I must confess, I still suffer the same pain. I still make the same mistakes for which the society punishes me. I have no extra powers. When I mentioned that, you really should see the expression, I wish I had taken. Clearly, what else is there? Then I tell you, all you get is not bliss, not ananda, not bliss, simply quieter, negative peace of mind. That's all you're going to get. I didn't stop at that, Barton. I didn't stop at that. I said, I've got peace of mind. Someone asked me, what do you mean you've got peace of mind? What have you got? I said, what does peace of mind mean? What would you say? We have come to the, we have got peace of mind. We have accepted that. Haven't you? What someone asks you, what do you mean by peace of mind? What would you tell him?
It's the absence.
How would he know that he has got peace of mind? If I suffer from pain, would I still have peace of mind?
If you've done it correctly, yes.
So he will say, I've given you one example. If I have, but all the time, what does peace of mind mean? I'm telling you this just to show to the extent which I have gone into it. That is why my experience has been there is no question which I have not been able to answer because I have asked that question myself. You know the answer? What is peace of mind?
The total
answer is, I'm never uncomfortable with myself. I'm never uncomfortable with the other. Whoever the other is, someone close to me or a stranger, I'm never uncomfortable with myself. I'm never uncomfortable with the other. Why? Because I know I can't hurt him and he can't hurt me.
May I ask a question? how can you overcome your conditioning if somebody approaches you and slaps you in the face? Now we all know we are conditioned, and if I would be slapped in the face, there would be a flash of anger.
Very good question.
I'm aware of it, but still I can't avoid my conditioning.
Yes, very good question. What will happen is precisely what is supposed to happen.
Well, according to my conditioning,
No, wait a minute, there's no question happening. If someone comes and slaps me, you are asking me what would I do? Aren't you? Is that not what you are asking me? I'm enlightened.
No.
I'm enlightened. If someone comes and slaps me,
I'm not asking what will you do. I'm asking if somebody slaps you, you will feel a reaction. You will not do anything. But you will feel a reaction according to your conditioning.
You are asking what will I do?
Okay, all right.
You can't. That is your question.
Okay, all right.
I take it that you are enlightened, and you confess that you are enlightened.
Yeah.
What happens if someone comes and slaps you? What is the answer? Martin, then I have accepted that I am not the doer of any action. What can the answer be? I don't know what will happen. If someone comes with a dagger ready to stab you, I can take an even more extreme example. If someone comes with a dagger to stab you right here, what will you do? My answer would be, I honestly do not know what will happen. My honest answer, I do not know what will happen. Two things could happen. I may beg down and beg him, please don't kill me. Or I'll kick him in the balls. I don't know what will happen. That is my destiny. I call it predestined. Therefore, another important point is, what will you do? The first reaction, what you expect is, if somebody comes, I will be angry. Isn't that what you mean? If someone comes to slap me or insults me, your question is not what I will do, what will be my reaction? And such is an important, very important point. The important point is, if something happens to me, then you are thinking in terms of what I would do, how I would react. Isn't that right? How I would react. And the most important point is that reaction, which is bound to happen. Everything else, the reaction will be there. That reaction, I'm convinced, it will not be my reaction, not the ego's reaction. No, not the ego's reaction, but the biological reaction in the body-mind organism based on genes and conditioning. On genes and conditioning. The Buddha, someone came and insulted him. He didn't, there was no response. The biological reaction based on Buddha's genes and conditioning, there was no response. In an ordinary person, a similar happening would bring about anger. So if something happens like that, if someone comes and slaps me, there is bound to be a biological reaction. Let us say anger. Anger could arise. Why should I see something on the TV. I see a terror is happening on the anger would arise, horror would arise as a biological reaction in the body-mind organism, which I would witness as anger arising in a body-mind organism, which happens to be mine at that moment. At another time, anger may not arise.
But would it not be desirable, being an enlightened person, that you gradually try to change your conditioning so that you experience less and less anger, frustration and pain in that respect? I know the answer, but...
now what is the answer?
The answer is, it's not in your will because it happens as it happens.
No, your question is based on doership. What will you do?
See, but that is exactly the point.
No, put a specific question. Put a specific question to me. Don't worry about my feelings. Put a specific question to me.
If you're sitting on your own,
yeah,
reflecting on your being and on the world,
yeah,
would you?
I'm sorry.
If you're just sitting on your own, silently reflecting on yourself and on the world, would you come to the conclusion it would be desirable
to thinking
to change your conditioning?
No. That cannot happen for one reason. There is nothing desirable that I could want.
Yeah.
Because whatever is to happen is going to happen. This wanting something is expectation.
Yeah.
And all expectation has stopped with the total understanding.
Yeah.
Expectation means inviting frustration.
Yeah. Full point.
That is the point, you see. Therefore, the doing has stopped.
Yeah.
But the happening cannot stop.
Yeah.
That is my point.
Yeah.
Doing has stopped, but happening cannot stop. And the happening is a biological reaction in this body-mind organism. Very good point, therefore I must elaborate. The usual example I give is, 4 foreigners come and get in a car, they go around Bombay, the car stops at a traffic signal in Bombay, and the usual experience. 4 or 5 beggar boys come around the car, put them behind and beg for money. That is the situation. 4 people in the car. The reactions can be 4 different reactions to the same situation being seen by 4 different people. And my point is that reaction, all the 4 reactions will be biological reactions, and the respective egos will have no control over that. Therefore, in one body-mind organism, anger may arise. In another, fear may arise. The young lady now, this is only 2 o'clock in the afternoon. If it were late and not 3 or 4, but 30, 40 people, fear could arise. In another, disgust could arise. And in the 4th, compassion could arise. In my country, these boys would have been receiving education in a school. Here, they have to come and beg money for food. Compassion. Anger, fear, disgust, or compassion. The ego concern has no connection. Therefore, suppose among the 4, there was one sage, one man with understanding. Who would you say the man of understanding is? The one in whom compassion arose. I say no. It could be any one of the other 3. witnessing 4 different reactions arising in 4 different body, mind, organisms without blaming anyone or admiring anyone.
Yes.
The ego is not concerned.
Yeah.
You see, the ego is not concerned.
Very helpful.
Therefore, a very important point. Therefore, the man of understanding witnesses a biological reaction in a body, mind, organism, which may be his or may not be his, but over which the ego has no control. Therefore, he doesn't say he was angry, she was afraid, he was disgusted, and he is a compassionate man. An important point, a very important point. Okay. Now, yes, sir, please. Do you have any questions?
Not so.
So again, my point here is, your son can die, you can't die. Only thing that happens is, when the body-mind object, when the body is there, then all that happens is that the connection with the soul is no longer needed, and the identified consciousness again becomes impersonal consciousness. No human being can die, only the object can die. The identification loses.
But why should it be no longer needed? If it is still young?
But now let's look at it this way. Suppose
it had not unfolded.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Suppose your son was to have cancer after next year. What then? Nobody knows what is going to happen in future. So if that is so, your son has been saved the misery and torment of cancer. Isn't that right? Therefore, what happens why should we think the future as a glorious future which your son has missed? He died so young.
He was very able and very bright.
He had so much success in future, so much happiness. But it could be the other way around.
Also.
It could be the other way around.
Well, he was suffering. He got relieved from his suffering.
That is the point.
Yeah.
He was released from his existing suffering, and he was released from his future suffering. That is the only way to look at it. Okay.
Well, I have been looking at it like this, but still the hurt is there.
Yeah, naturally, because that pain is still there. Pain cannot go away. But surely, it's only 6 months now, isn't it?
Yeah.
But your experience will be that the pain arises only when there is a memory arises. And everybody's experience, everybody since beginning of time, over a period, as time elapses, the arising of the memory will become less frequent. The arising of the memory will be less frequent, and the intensity of the grief will also become less and less. And quite soon, you will be speaking about your son's death to many people quite easily, as if it was a happening. That is the healing of time. This has happened for hundreds of years. Okay?
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Please.
I can maybe give them all to you and we can work through them. The first one, I'd like for you to explain the sentence, I am that. The second question that comes up came up yesterday when you were explaining, and I do believe somewhere in there I understand, but would like for you to really specify it. What is the difference between pain and suffering, and isn't pain in the moment usually enough to bring you out of happiness, or does one reach a point where the peace and happiness remains even though that the body is in pain?
So now give me a specific question. What is a specific question? Let's go step by step. What is your question?
I understand how we spend so much of our lives in the pursuit of pleasure because it supposedly feels better than pain does.
No.
Yeah.
That everybody would pursue pleasure rather than pain is self-evident.
Okay. So why is it that pain is different from suffering? Why is it that pain in itself, how can one experience pain without losing happiness? How can one experience pain and not suffer?
When the pain is there, you suffer the pain. But the suffering, but that gets restricted to your pain. But if you at the same time you think that the pain that you are suffering is because of something you did which you should not have done.
So that load of guilt goes away.
That pain becomes much more intensified. I brought it on this myself. There was no need for me to do it. I did something which I should not have done. And that is what has brought the pain. Your pain then becomes suffering. Your pain then gets transferred into suffering. That is the difference between pain and suffering. Pain happens, it happens. But the memory, thinking about what you could quite easily have done to avoid that pain is the suffering. That is the difference between pain and suffering. Okay, next question.
I am that.
I am that simply means I am one of two perspectives. I, Ramesh or Apurva. Who or what is Ramesh or Apurva? Two perspectives. Each of us, one perspective, I can only be a three-dimensional object. I am this body. This body is mine, I am this body. The body can only be a three-dimensional object. One of the objects in the billions of objects which constitute the totality of manifestation. This is a three-dimensional object. Therefore, I am a three-dimensional object. Is one perspective. The other perspective is that I can do what I like. The body can't do anything. I am able to do whatever I want. Therefore, I am the energy functioning through this body-mind organism and bringing about whatever I want to do. Therefore, one perspective, I am a three-dimensional. The other is, I am the fundamental basic energy capable of functioning through this three-dimensional object. Therefore, I am the fundamental basic energy, which is God, which is that. On the one side, you can do I am that, functioning through a three-dimensional object, bringing about whatever is supposed to happen. From that point of view, I am that. And that, everyone can say the same thing. either I am a three-dimensional object or I am that energy, basic fundamental energy, the soul or God, functioning through every human being. Two perspectives. And therefore, I began with the perspective, I am that, you are that. But I had a problem. My problem was, I accept there is no doubt that the three-dimensional object cannot function. Therefore, every human being able to function in life has to be fundamentally in principle that which is the source, which is God, or whatever I call it. So I am that, you are that, he is that, she is that. I accept. But knowing that does not tell me how I am to live my life in interhuman, inter-ego relationships in daily living and be happy. That is.
So the way you explain it now is done more to create that happiness.
Therefore, I told you, for 40 years I pursued enlightenment, ended up in frustration for this reason. Therefore, after retirement, I started thinking about it and pursuing something personally. I decided what minimum item. There is body, mind, organism, and there is Ramesh. Ramesh has to live his life through this body. Therefore I said, from now moment I shall pursue happiness for myself. Therefore, I repeat, I pursued enlightenment for 40 years, ended up in frustration. I started pursuing the selfish goal of personal happiness for myself, and I ended up enlightened.
How did you know that you had reached it when you were pursuing happiness? Once you reached happiness, how did you know it was enlightenment?
For one reason alone. I got what I wanted. When I was pursuing enlightenment, I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what enlightenment was.
So you can say enlightenment is happiness? Happiness is enlightenment?
Yes. Therefore, the ultimate happiness which I got was only through total acceptance of a concept which I call enlightenment. The happiness that I wanted, I got only through the acceptance of a particular concept, nothing else. And therefore I call that concept enlightenment. I repeat, the happiness that I was seeking, I got only through the total acceptance of a concept. Therefore I call that concept enlightenment.
And you're always happy, even in pain, even in anger, you're still happy.
I am at peace. Happiness through peace of mind. Happiness not through pleasure. Happiness through peace of mind, not happiness through pleasure. Happiness through peace of mind. Sukha Shanti. Not Sukha through pleasure.
This is, as you probably remember, this is the one place I always get stuck, is I am that. I am the energy. I am personalized consciousness.
So are you, and he, and he, and she.
Everybody. So then how can my actions not matter? This three-dimensional object can't move this arm. I can move this arm. Now that I can move this arm, I can use it to slap her, or I can use it for other purpose.
And that,
yes,
and that is the ego, with a sense of personal doers.
True. Okay.
And that is why the ego is unhappy.
True, but the ego also has the mechanism of control at this point in time of that life force that's running through.
Who is the ego?
I don't know. That's why I'm here.
The ego is the impersonal consciousness of the soul identified with a particular body-mind organism, which means every body-mind organism is connected to the soul, and that connection is the ego. Every body-mind organism is connected to the soul, so that an ego has been created, so that daily living as inter-ego relationship should happen.
So this ego
thinks he is the doer of his action, and therefore every time he does something and takes credit or blames someone, the connection with the soul
is broken.
Gets broken, and he becomes an independent entity with power to do anything I want. And therefore becomes unhappy. When the realization happens, I seem to be doing something, but really there is nothing in my control. I have total free will, but that free will is worthless both in theory and practice. Therefore, am I really doing anything? Or whatever I think I have been doing was happening through this body-mind organism, because it was supposed to happen. Then the connection is again established. But any time again you think you have done some, connection gets broken. But once I have been able to accept totally, no human being can be a doer of any action. I can't be a doer of any action. I can't hurt you and you can't hurt me. Nobody is a doer. Then that connection with the soul is never broken. And the ego has peace of mind.
But the ego is very much necessary to function in daily living.
Indeed, that was my problem.
Okay, so the ego is very...
That was my problem.
The ego is very much necessary to function in daily living.
Yeah.
And to some extent be effective in daily living.
All extent.
To be effective in daily
living.
Okay.
But the moment the ego continues to think that he is the doer of action, he is unhappy.
True. No, he knows that the life is flowing. See, I mean, in one sense, when the source really cuts you off, then it's finished, isn't it?
See that again?
When the source truly cuts you off, when the breath stops, this ego is completely useless.
The source cannot cut you off. Source cuts you off only when the body is dead.
That's what I meant.
So when you are dead, you are no, there is a question.
There is no question. But then, no, but you mentioned that if you begin to believe that you are the doer of these actions, you are getting cut off from the source.
No, the connection gets broken. Because then you are on your own as an independent doer. But the connection once broken, when the realization happens that I am not the doer, I simply cannot be the doer, then the connection gets re-established, and thereafter, as long as you live, the connection never gets broken. The connection never being broken means sukha shanti, happiness through peace of mind.
You know, we had spoken, I think it was a year or two ago, about how what you were saying was not going into my heart. And I thought and pondered on that a lot. Or, you know, the pondering and the thinking of that happened a lot. And this is the one bit that actually can completely sit in my heart, And I'd like you to help me work through that, or maybe this is the acceptance that I need and that would be fine for me, which is the following. I am that. The energy that flows through me is God or whatever else.
You are merely repeating a concept. You are merely repeating a concept. What's the use of repeating a concept 100 times? Question is, how deep has the acceptance that you are not the doer and the other is not the doer, how deep is it? Well, is it only in the mind or in the heart?
Well, that's my, let me finish please.
Oh, all right, go ahead.
So, I am that.
Go ahead.
Without the life force, I can do nothing. But when the life force is present, there is a certain navigation ability. For the ones who are going purely by conditioning and not choosing to any extent, yes, they're living in a sense of being unconscious. If you are consciously choosing, as a soul, as a life, I choose this versus that. Aren't you, as that ego, navigating the life force in a direction that ultimately was determined by the life force itself?
So what is your question, Apurva?
My question is that I can accept non-doership, but I have.
But that is the point. That precisely is the point. I accept that, but. And that but is the difference or the distance between this and this. That but is the difference between this and this.
So, but this is where the but lies. The but lies in, it's hard to believe that my actions have no probabilistic effect on this planet.
Yes.
No probabilistic effect.
That is the but.
That is the but. So how do we clear the but?
You still think that it's your doing. You are the doer. And so, your next question is?
How do we melt it?
What does Apurva have to do to make it? Isn't that it? What does Apurva have to do to make it?
Well, I know the answer to the question.
But the whole point is Apurva has never ever been the doer of the simplest action. That is the whole point. That is the whole basis of the but. That is the whole basis of the but. Therefore, the ultimate point comes in. The ultimate question is, intellectually, even a damn fool will accept a concept of non-doership, which takes away the entire load of hatred for myself, for my actions, which have hurt people. A bigger load of hatred for others have hurt me. Even a damn fool will accept this concept of non-doership. But the concept cannot work until the acceptance is total. Until the pride of doership is smashed. But the pride of doership is still so strong that you want to know what you have to do to smash. And the point, you are not, you've never been the doer. Therefore, it will happen only if it is supposed to happen. It will not happen unless it is not supposed to happen. And you want to know what happens when it goes to your heart? How will you know whether it has reached your heart or not? Is that your question? How will you know that it has reached your heart? First, the intellectual pride will have disappeared. Humility will arise. The humility will turn into tears in your eyes. Tears in your eyes will represent the gratitude for this wonderful happiness. The gratitude will make you think, what can I do for my Guru, who has brought about this tremendous transformation? And that is what happened, I'm telling you from personal experience. Therefore, when it happened, there was nothing I would not do for my Guru. And that is a standard happening. And that is why, in the Hindu terminology, when this happens, when the mind, from the mind it goes to the heart, there are two things which happen. Gratitude towards the Guru, which takes the form of seva and dana. That is based on everybody's experience. There is no way nothing that I do seems good enough for my Guru, irrespective of whether he needs it or not. Where I was concerned with my Guru, he needed it. To that extent, my happiness was doubled. So what I did was, by way of seva, service, after the end of the talk, I would take him in a car or a taxi, take him round for half an hour. We'll have a cup of tea or coffee or milk or buttermilk, bring him back. Then I would ask him, does he have any shopping to do? Would he like to go elsewhere, somewhere? If he did, I would take him, help him do his shopping, and bring him back, for which he was grateful. And whenever possible, I would give him a gift of money, a donation, which for me was big enough. But for him, it was enormous. The first time I did that, I remember distinctly. Happened to be his birthday. And I could see people bringing small amounts of money. And he would say, thank you very much, put it in his pocket. I went 10 minutes early the next morning, gave him an envelope which contained 1,000 rupees. 1,000 rupees 30 years ago, not 20 years ago, was a large amount.
50,000 now.
Sorry?
50,000 now.
Easily. I'll tell you what, Joe. When I retired from the bank, my salary was 5,000 rupees. My servant here, house servant, got a job in the bank as a peon. And after about 25 years, he retired. So he came to meet me once. So almost as a joke, I asked him, Shankar, what is your salary now? Somewhere around 5,000 rupees. And he said, oh, Baba, something like that. So I had the shock. So the salary I had retired on after 10-15 years was what the peon was getting after 25 years of service. But at that time, but what happened was, I offered him the envelope. He looked at the envelope, didn't put it in his pocket and say thank you very much. He kept it aside and said, look, after the talk, don't go away as usual, I want to talk to you. So after everything was done, he had picked up the envelope. He said, you have given this to me? So I said, Maharaj, I know what you're thinking. What you're thinking is, this man has just retired from the bank service. And the bank has no facility of pension. He has to rely on his own savings. Can he afford to give me this? And I assure you, my children are well settled, I can afford to give you this, and I would like to do it as often as I can. He looked me in my eyes just to make sure I was, because he was aware that this urge to give can be so powerful as to make anyone do foolish things. So he did. So he wanted to be sure that I was not giving something beyond my means. So I satisfied him. He looked me in the eyes, was sure that I was doing, then he put it and he said, thank you very much. So when it happened to me, when what he said went to my heart, there were no buts, and this is what happened. I did my best, whatever I did, and then I came to know that these are the traditional and for which they have even terms. Seva means service to the Guru. Dana means donation to the Guru. And both these things happen. I repeat, both these things happen.
Now, Rameshji, as we were speaking here...
So having heard this, if some millionaire decides to take me around and I don't need it.
You don't like going anywhere.
So if some millionaire who could give me $100,000 gives me $100, he doesn't have to think that it's from his heart.
The issue I feel...
In other words, what I'm saying is the need to give is independent of the need to receive. Therefore, I make it clear, I'm more than comfortable. I'm perfectly, I don't need either money or service. But this is the need to receive is not there, but it has nothing to do with the need to give. But that is what makes the difference between the head and the heart. And even that there is nothing you can do about it. It can only happen if it is supposed to happen. Yes, Roger?
I feel more than doership, my issue is a feeling of responsibility.
How do you mean? Doing and responsibility go together. Doing and responsibility go together. I think it's my responsibility to do it, I do it. Or I do whatever needs to be done with the total acceptance that what seems like my doing is a happening which had to happen through this body, mind, organism.
Yes, but you are personalized consciousness, so whatever arises in you as what consciousness should do, you go ahead and do.
That is what I call total free will, which is the very basis of daily living.
And it does make some impact on the world around you.
Which God was forced to give to every human being.
True, and whatever the human's free will is, however it is exercised, makes a difference to the world around him or her.
So what? Apurva, so what?
So with that comes responsibility.
All right, so what? All right, responsibility comes. No human being can live in this world without a sense of responsibility. Free will goes with the responsibility. So what?
So then how can you say I cannot sin?
I cannot sin because I cannot do anything which is considered a sin.
Well, there is...
I cannot do anything which is considered a sin or a merit. People are not worried about committing merits. People are concerned about committing sins. And what I am telling everybody, you don't have to worry about committing a sin. You cannot commit a sin. Whatever you have done which you are supposed to think is a sin is God's doing.
No, but you are steering that little ship. This particular little piece of consciousness is being steered somehow by this ego mechanism. Is it not?
Frankly, Apurva, I haven't understood your question. What is your question?
This particular droplet in the ocean, this identified body-mind organism, this identified consciousness is in some way being steered through by the ego.
The ego is being steered by the source.
Okay, fine.
They're talking it up.
All right, fine.
The ego is being steered by the source. The source is doing whatever is happening through that body-mind organism, which the ego thinks is his action, his responsibility, his direction. That is the whole point. That is the whole point. Okay, anyway. When your thinking stops, then you will know some progress is being made.
तुझे रूप चित्ती राहो मुखी तुझे नाम तुझे रूप चित्ती राहो मुखी तुझे नाम देह प्रपंचाचा दास सुखे करो काम सुखे करो काम तुझे रूप चित्ती राहो मुखी तुझे नाम देहधारी जो जो त्याचे विहित नित्य कर्म सदाचार सन्मार्गाचा आगळा न धर्म देहधारी जो जो त्याचे विहित नित्य कर्म सदाचार सन्मार्गाचा आगळा न धर्म तुला आवडे ते हाती घडी नित्य कर्म तुला आवडे ते हाती घडी नित्य कर्म देह प्रपंचाचा दास सुखे करो काम सुखे करो काम तुझे रूप चित्ती राहो मुखी तुझे नाम तुझ्या पदी वाहिला मी देह भाव सारा पुढे अंतराळी आत्मा सोडूनी पसारा तुझ्या पदी वाहिला मी देह भाव सारा पुढे अंतराळी आत्मा सोडूनी पसारा नाम तुझे घेतो गोरा नाम तुझे घेतो गोरा ओनी निष्कामा नाम तुझे घेतो गोरा ओनी निष्कामा देह प्रपंचाचा दास सुखे करो काम सुखे करो काम तुझे रूप चित्ती राहो मुखी तुझे नाम तुझे रूप चित्ती राहो मुखी तुझे नाम पांडुरंग 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 पांडुरंग